Hello and welcome to another episode of Diary of a Dungeon Master. My name's Ryan and I'm your DM for this channel, and in today's episode we will be creating a monster that is pivotal to the first session of my new campaign, which starts in January. Which, as a pre-plug, we will be recording the sessions for podcasts, so stay tuned for more info on that. Now the creature we're creating today, it is what I've referred to for the past couple of weeks as a memory stealer. And it's instrumental in the first part of the campaign for a couple of reasons. But in the very first session, the players are going to come up against this creature. And it's this interaction that will aid to bring them together as a party. And spoiler alert, it's also where one of my players will lose every trace of who they are. So same as always, if you do like what I do, drop a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you know when my content is fresh off the press. On top of that, any questions or suggestions as we go through, drop them down in the comments. And just before we get into it, I will be using the species template on Worldbuilding to create this monster today. So without further ado, let's light up the forge. And we're back. That's a little strange. It should be. There we go. Do apologise for that technical difficulty there. So when it comes to creating the monster today, we are going to do it, as I say, on the species template within World Anvil. Now, before the video, I did kind of put up a couple of different points that I want to get covered off today. Now, I'm not going to go into a full kind of 3-page article around a memory stealer, because all I need is the kind of fundamental basics just to get them off the ground and get going. So I'm going to be using World Anvil for the main article, but then what I'm going to try and do off camera is I'm going to create a stat block for it as well, using Homebrewery first of all, which again, if you've never heard of that, check it out. It is a nice system to create proper D&D looking stat blocks, and very little coding knowledge is needed because it's got all of the templates there for you. So I'm going to use that first of all. Then I'm going to come back onto World Anvil and I'm going to use their stat block feature, because I've not actually had a chance to use that because I've never had a reason to, but now we do. So with the memory stealer then, as I say, that's kind of its interim name. I kind of want to come up with something a little better than that. But with the memory stealer, as I say, this is going to be the first kind of combat session, and it is going to happen in the first session, and provided I time it right, it's going to happen within the first hour. All of the players are going to be in the city of Varkon, which is the city that we built in the last episode. So they're all going to be there. They're all going to be doing their little bits. And then they're going to converge on this one scene where a memory stealer is attacking my dwarf player. And they have to make a decision on how they handle that situation. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So all I need at this point is just kind of the basics of the creature. So I came up with these 5 different points that I'd like to get covered off, and I'd like to understand kind of what I want from this creature. So with appearance I did think a lot about. because I was kind of under the impression of going kind of like Mind Flayer look, but then I was like, no, I think that's a bit too cliche. And I thought we'll stick to a humanoid then, or kind of like human looking. I thought no, that's a bit too basic. So I'm kind of going down a little bit down the middle, almost doppelganger-y look. Okay. So the Memory Stealer itself has a very dark grey skin. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking with this that it would be almost drow dark. Yeah, kind of almost drow dark, but maybe a little bit lighter. I'd probably say more like this shade of grey rather than say this grey. So it's still a dark colour, still a dark shade, but at the same time it's not too dark. So that's kind of the thing that I was thinking when it comes to appearance. What I might also say, just kind of, I feel like that this would have a little bit of texture to it as well. And if I'm thinking of the right... Yeah, I was thinking the right one. So I would say it's kind of like mottled as well. Has a mottled texture to its skin. In fact, a rubbery mottled texture. So I'd kind of say that it would look like this, where you've got kind of like these strange circly looking things as you go down the skin. But it's still very, very dark. They've also got this kind of like rubbery skin as well to its skin. I would also say as well that, in fact, if we go bottom up with this creature, because the head is something I wasn't really thinking too much about, but I would say that they have got taloned feet. Okay. They would still have kind of... I'm thinking with this that it might be a... I suppose the best way I can explain it is a human foot with talons, realistically. Because these would be very agile creatures, but they're also minion creatures as well. So I'd say that they have taloned feet with 8 toes on each, and they are able to use this feature to aid in their agile movements. I'm going to put that for now, and in there I'm just going to put i.e. Climbing objects, stalking across roofs, which is something that they are likely to do, as they're a minion-y creature, but they're still hunter creatures. So you've got their feet, legs are very, I suppose I'm going to put that here, legs and arms are very lean and thin. So then coming up to their torso, I would say it's almost, I suppose it sounds kind of weird when I say it, but their torso is triangular in shape. Whatever I can spell. So yeah, I'd say it's triangular in shape. So it's quite broad at the shoulder, but then kind of leans into a very tiny waist. Just to kind of give you a reference to that, I'm thinking old Arnie pictures for this one. Yeah, so you can see where it's quite broad at the top, but then it comes quite thin down the bottom. Very triangular in shape, if you can kind of see where I'm going with that. So yeah, very triangular in shape, thin waist, and very broad shouldered. As I say, arms are very lean and thin, the muscles are very sinewy, very lean and thin. I didn't think I saw that right. Sinewy muscles showing. I know there's a better way I can explain that, so I'll edit that in a bit. So yeah, triangular in shaped torso. Very broad shouldered, lean, thin arms, very sinewy as well, so you can see every tendon as they move. What I might also say is their arms are rather long to get a better reach. For hands, they have a clawed left hand and a clubbed right hand. Okay, so what I mean by that, I know if you were to, I'm not going to do it on this one, but I know if you were to do like a Google search, clubbed hand would show you something slightly different, but what I'm trying to say is it very much looks like a hand. So if I was to grab an online whiteboard, for example, and there is one somewhere, here we go. When it loads. So if I was to kind of give you an example, is their arm would kind of come down like that. Just for, you can see the sinews, etc. And then if you imagine that this is their wrist, okay, their hand will kind of come out like that and kind of club around like that, okay, so it's almost stumped. There's literally no, I suppose, kind of movable limb at the end. It's just one hulking mass. It's almost as if you were to make a fist, where you've got the lines of your fingers, your thumb, all of those creases and things is all molded together in one chunk of skin. Okay, so you kind of get the point that I'm trying to make with that. Okay, so going back to whatever. So yeah, you've got very much clawed left hand. You clubbed right hand. So obviously you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to be striking with the claws, thrusting with the club, or like that. Kind of movements like this. Very movements you'd expect, really. Okay, so yeah, very basic movement. I'm doing all this. I'm realising that my background's blocking it, but never mind. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for in appearance from kind of like feet up. Then when we get to kind of like the head, again, I've not thought too much about it. So like there's finer details, but kind of the main idea is the memory Steelers head is the same mottled grey as the rest of its body. It has no nose, soulless black eyes, and translucent skin over its. I was going to say skull, but I'm going to specify cranium. So if anyone doesn't know what cranium is, it's this part of your skull. It's that very back, your crown, so to speak. It's the very back part of your head, the kind of bit here. So that whole bit is kind of be like translucent, and underneath this skin, should anyone be able to get close enough, they would see the skin almost moving. What I mean by that is I kind of feel like their brain, I'm going to use the term loosely, the brain would be underneath the skin, but it's kind of doing this. That's a really bad example, but when it's kind of doing this, it's pushing at the translucentness, so if you were to get close enough and look at it, you can kind of see this whole head kind of wiggling around and writhing. So as I say, it would all be, the skin itself would almost look like it's moving. Actual fact, this is the brain moving around the skull. Because I do feel like it would have a brain of some description, but it would be moving around in there. Why? How? No idea yet, but that's the thing I'm going with. Now we get onto the more challenging part, something that I always struggle with when I come to making stuff like this, is ecology. So if you don't know what ecology means, it's basically everything to do with the origin, or rather where they're from. So for the memory stealer, is commonly found underground or in caves. They seldom like the daylight. Now I'm going to say seldom like the sunshine, but reluctantly head out at dusk or twilight to go hunting. Okay, so I do feel like if you had got a relatively bright day, or it's bright sunshine, that you will never ever see one of these creatures. But if you have a really dark, overcast day, or if it's getting towards the evening, dusk and twilight, it's getting quite dark, your chances of seeing these things are higher. But what I will say with these creatures is it's very rare that you will see them because there's so few of them. They're not a massive creature, and as I say, they're quite minion creatures. You've got the memory stealer. When it comes to the society, this is something I've got to think about. As commonly found underground caves to go hunting. I might end up putting ecology and society in one paragraph at this point. When the memory stealer. Populated areas, such as towns and cities. So it's not unheard of, but villagers are less likely to see one of these, because essentially, and I'll come on to it a little bit more in a minute, is the memories that they feed on Okay? So they will feed on a person and they will take their memories. Now, depending on the age of the memory stealer, the diet, how hungry it's been, how far between feeds, etc., is the extent of the memory damage. So, with the dwarf that you're going to meet when the campaign starts in January, he's going to have absolutely no idea, and that's because, again, spoiler for any of my players that are watching this, which I hope you're not watching it, the memory scene that they're going to come across is going to be quite mature, very mature actually. Nowhere near the end of its lifespan, but it's still a very mature. And realistically, it's not going to matter a jot of difference at this point. But I would say that this memory stealer has been underground for a while, maybe in some sort of hibernation. Maybe that's something I could add to these later on down the line when I kind of have time to think about them a little bit more. But this memory stealer that's going to attack the dwarf is going to be very, very hungry, and it is going to keep feeding and take everything. I mean, the only thing that this guy is going to have left, and it's only because it was interrupted by, hopefully, interrupted by the rest of the party, is muscle memory. Okay. So later on, when he gets in combat, he's honestly going to have no idea what he can do. But he knows he's got swords on his back, he knows he's got an axe at his belt. If I'm remembering the characters correctly. Essentially, he's going to be able to pull those weapons out and just go to town. He's just going to be able to fight, but it's not going to be because he knows what he's doing. It's muscle memory, and it's the only thing he's going to have left. But villagers are less likely to see one of these, as I say, because they need people. They always hunt in a densely populated area. I suppose if you've got a relatively big village, so a village that really should be a town, that kind of thing, that you might see them, but kind of like a small village out in the middle of nowhere, you're probably never going to see one. Though I would say never. So when they hunt, they are found in the more populated areas, such as towns and city. And this is because they can feed on multiple people. They are also sentient beings enough that they know they must keep their activities under wraps. So that essentially they know that everybody knows about them, or are likely to know about them, but what they also know is whether or not these people can remember is they don't want to cause too many full amnesiacs. Because although they won't remember anything about the encounter with the memory stealer or anything at all, with a memory stealer, actually, I'm going to change that. They know what they're doing. Okay, they are not bad people. However, feeding on memories is the only way they can survive. Okay, so feeding on memories is the only way they can survive, as they are still sentient beings. They do feel, so sentient beings, most still feel guilty for the life they must lead, but the alternative is unthinkable for them. Okay, so essentially they're not, I mean, I don't know what alignment I'm going to put them under yet, but they know what they're doing, they know the impact, and they do feel guilty because essentially they are destroying this person. And again, the circumstances around the full attack that's going to happen to my dwarf, I don't know. But they do know what they're doing, and they feel guilty for it. You know, it literally is the only way they can survive is by feeding on the memories and the emotions that come with those memories. So, and if they stop feeding, they go into, I suppose if I use Vampire Diaries, it's a really bad way of explaining it, but if a vampire in that goes without blood too long, they kind of start shriveling up and kind of almost calcifying. It's kind of where I want to go with them. And they have to feed on the memories. There's honestly no other way that they can survive, and it has to be humanoid memories as well. So in the case of vampires, if they don't want to feed on humans, they can feed on animals. With this, it doesn't matter if you're dragonborn, dwarf, gnome, human, leonin, whatever, you're going to get fed on simply because there is no other way that these guys can live. You might find for the most part in certain areas that the memory stealer would only feed on the homeless as well. But for the most part, they'll always use somebody where they can slip in and out unnoticed, normally speaking. As with all societies, they are sentient beings. There might be... Ooh. I wonder. I was going to say there might be a group of these that don't feel guilty about what they're doing. Might be an idea for the encounter. I'll explore that one down the line. You know. In fact, I need to go back here. So they're commonly found undergrounds or in caves. Seldom like sunshine, but reluctantly will head out in the dusk or twilight to go hunting. Communities of memory stealers. I really need to think of a better name for them. Communities of memory stealers will dig themselves tunnels underneath mountains and hill ranges in order to keep themselves protected. Okay. Now, when I say tunnels, what I don't want my players or anybody else, if I do kind of publish this properly as a full-blown homebrew monster, is that these tunnels will not equate to a city of memory stealers. I am talking more of these tunnels look to be more like rabbit warrens. Is that kind of what I'm thinking here? Yeah, similar. So they'd have a couple of different chambers. So if this was the main entrance, you come in, you'd have one or two, 3 or 4 different chambers, but you wouldn't necessarily have anything more than that. I mean, take this one for example. It's just down, you've got the main one and a couple of tunnels. But other than that, this might be a typical one where you've got one, you know, 3 different chambers and a couple of exits. That's kind of where I'm going with it. There is going to be, of course, the differences. Look to be more like rabbit warrens than organised tunnels. That kind of where I'm going. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I'll edit it all later. So society then. So I would say although a memory stealer is a solitary hunter, they do not, however, live by themselves. They live in clusters of around 4 or 5 memory stealers. In their tunnel homes, they will keep each other warm and safe. Whether they are related by blood or circumstance, each member of the cluster will always keep an eye out for the others in their tunnel domain. Okay, so what I'm kind of thinking here is that warren, that tunnel warren, is their sanctuary. Okay, it is for them, it is for every other memory stealer in that cluster. Right? Now, although they're kind of, again, it's stuff I've got to think about, but their day-to-day living might be as simple as go and hunt, come back, sleep. When the next time that they have to feed, go out, hunt, come back, hibernate or sleep or whatever it is. Something simple like that. But if their warren was to come under attack or be intruded on, whether it be sentient creatures, animals, whatever it is, they will fight to the death to protect everyone else in that cluster. Okay. But when out the main entrance, it's every memory stealer for themselves. There's a little bit more I'd like to add to that, but that just kind of gives me the basics. As I say, I'm only looking for the basics. I've kind of covered off diet already, haven't I? So feeding on memories is the only way they can survive. Yeah, I've already done diet, so I can end that one off. So abilities then, and again, this is purely just a very brief description of what it is that they can do. So they've got the clawed hand, they've got the clubbed hand, memory feed, climbing, yeah. So as I say, they're a very minion-y creature. Oh, that reminds me. It's something I need to take away and think about. So what does a leader of a cluster look like? Is it a different memory stealer form? You know, not Microsoft form, memory stealer form. What does that look like? Because I feel like there might be something to happen with this in the campaign, so we'll see on that one. But that is essentially what I need for now. You know, I know what they look like, I know where they live, I know where they hunt, what times they're around, what they feed on. I know they're a solitary hunter, but they'll live in a group of 4 or 5. They live in tunnels. Kind of know how the cluster will interact with each other. The leader is something else I've got to look at, and I know their abilities. Okay, so there is going to be a couple of expansions to do on all of that. But that is essentially all I need to get this creature off the ground. The only thing I need to do now is look at the stat block and what that looks like. But again, the leader side of it, expansion on the abilities, and the stat block is something that I'm going to have to take offline. And yeah, that is where I'm going to leave this episode. So this episode is half as long as the last episode, so it's nice and bite-sized. So I'm going to leave it there. Next episode, I am actually going to be taking a dive into... So I'm actually in the northeastern continent. That's the area that the guys are going to be in for a while. Northeastern country of that, I'm going to be taking a dive into that history next episode. Because it started out as a monarchy, it is no longer a monarchy. So we're going to take a dive into what that looks like in the next episode. So I am going to leave it there. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got some hints and tips. If you've got any suggestions for me, as I say, I am looking to develop as a DM. Drop it down in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Make sure you're on top of my content. But apart from that, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.